Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Double F podcast. My name is Fahad Farouk. This is a podcast where we're kicking off a brand new series of things that we're going to talk about, not in a really preachy way, but in a kind of a practical way. I don't like to use the term keeping it real because I think it's a bit hacked, but that's what we're going to try and attempt to do with this podcast. So episodes are not going to be very long. They're going to be very quick fire episodes, maximum of about 10-15 minutes. And during these things, with every episode, let's try and talk about something that gets us thinking day to day. Not in a sense of things we can do differently, but in terms of how we can start to adapt the things we're doing now to make our current lives better. So the podcast is available on YouTube as a form of a video. It's also going to be available as audio on my website. That's fahadfarouk.com, and also the various podcast streaming sites. I'll put the links wherever I can do that. All right, so let's get into it. Episode 1 of the Double F podcast. Right then, episode 1, the Double F podcast with me, Fahad Farouk. What are we going to talk about today? This is about choice. In terms of making choices, one of the things that I want us to discuss is that choice seems to come with stress, like the stress of making choices, like what do I wear? What do I eat? Those are the simple ones, and the difficult ones, right? What part should I take in terms of my education? What part should I take in terms of my career? And a lot of these times we feel that there's a risk in making these choices because it's either one or the other, right? So when we were kids, choices were either made for us or we didn't need to make choices. Now, for an instance, when you were a kid and you were playing with a toy, if you were done with it, you put it back and you play with another toy. Simple as that, right? You didn't have to choose, do I play with this toy or this toy? That's if the toy was bought for you. Of course, if you had to go to a place like a toy shop or whatever and your parents made you choose, do you want this one or the other one? And you made a choice and you forgot about it because as kids, choice isn't something that you really need to think about. But as adults, choice is something that becomes critical. It's not only that, it's added to the fact that this choice is something that you have to make on your own. Whether it's the simple things like we mentioned about eating or the bigger things like we mentioned about, education choices and, career choices and stuff like that. So why is this so difficult? It's because time is very limited. Often more than not, there's an opportunity cost. Do I do this or this? Then I have let go of this as an opportunity cost. And any choice you make, you have to commit to it. Comes with a cost, right? So what happens when we can't choose? I know a couple of people, myself included, where we think that we're really bad at making choices, okay? And this reinforces itself over and over. And we try and subcontract this decision-making process. As an example, so I have 2 sisters and my parents, and whenever the family used to decide what we want to eat, it's always being subcontracted to the next person. So you ask one person, what do you want to eat? And then they ask the other person, hey, what do you think? And then you ask the other person, I can't decide, what do you want? Often more than not, because it's mentally easier to pass on that decision-making responsibility to someone else. And also the fact that sometimes you propose something and then somebody else says, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And you're like, what the hell, man? I proposed this, I suggested this, no, you don't want it, so now you suggest. So when we start to subcontract this decision-making process or this process of choosing to our partners, a family or friends, we start to think of ourselves as being indecisive, right? We program our brains into thinking, I'm an indecisive person, I can't choose. And on the rare occasion that we have to make a choice by ourselves, we start doubting those choices, like I made a bad choice. We become anxious when this choice sort of needs to be made. So it's clear, as adults, we need to figure out ways to make decisions, to make choices, and the struggle is real. The anxiety that comes with it is real. You're not alone when it comes to, decision anxiety and stuff like that, right? So what I want to do is let's talk about 3 things that you can start to include in your daily decision making process that will make it easier in a sense, right? You're not going to like that become better people at making choices, but you can grow towards it. So the first one, you've got to start with the simple things. And when I say simple things, it means things that will help you train your brain into evaluating options. Like, for example, the non-implication list. What am I going to wear? It might seem like a thing that causes great decision paralysis, but you need to coach your brain to think, okay, these are the options I have. This is what I wore last week. This is what I wore the week before. Maybe I will wear this today. Make that choice. In terms of food, this is the kind of thing I like to eat, but I had something like this before, or I feel like this. I'm going to make the choice. And the simple choices is these things are coaching your brain to get into this process of evaluating options. You need to train your brain to evaluate options. What's this option? What are the benefits? What are the costs in a sense? What's this option? What are the benefits? What are the costs? And what's the best possible thing that I could choose right about now? Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, you need to work towards avoid getting paralyzed about thinking about the fact that you need to make a decision. Let's focus on that a bit, right? So sometimes instead of making the decision, we get stuck in a paralysis about the fact that we have to make the decision. So we think, I got to do this. I've got to make this choice. I've got to make this decision. Instead of actually making the decision. So you get distracted along the way, right? You think about all the variables, all the factors. We don't commit to making a choice. And then somewhere down the line, we're really mentally tired, not having made a decision at all, when in fact we could have put that focus or attention to, like earlier, evaluating the options and making the decision. So there are 2 things when people say, I can't make a decision. Sometimes the options are overwhelming, and sometimes they're thinking about the fact that they need to make a decision. Identify where you're stuck, okay? If you're thinking about the fact that you need to do something, then it's better off to just do it. Put the attention to doing it. If you're thinking about all these options available, then get down to the choice of, evaluation. Which one should I start to do? The third step, and I think this is the most important step, because there's no such thing as a bad choice. Because if you evaluate something and you decide to go with it, then that's something that felt right to you at that point in time, and it's something that you've decided to do. Okay. However, what a lot of us do is that we sometimes don't fully commit to the choice we make, because at the back of our mind we haven't fully committed to it, and we're evaluating, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that, type of thing. So once you decide this is what I'm going to do, you need to absolutely fully commit to it, and see that you give that choice or that option or the decision as much benefit, as much credit, as much opportunity as possible to succeed. You decide on something and then you do it halfway, and then that thing doesn't fall through or go through, and then you decide, I made a bad choice, I'm a bad decision maker. But instead, did you give it a fair chance? That being said, sometimes you've got to be smart enough in order to realize, this is where I should pull the plug. This thing isn't working out, and I gotta decide what I'm gonna do. And you've got to be super smart about it. And I think that a lot of the times we as people get stuck in one of these 3 areas. The fact that we get overwhelmed by the options, and our brain is not in that mode of making a decision, and our brain sort of gets stuck in the middle, and our brain is like, I can't do it, I'm just going to postpone it, or I'm going to subcontract it, or something like that. And sometimes we're not in the frame of mind to evaluate options. Instead, we start thinking about all the unnecessary data around making a decision. And finally, like we said, it's about committing to that choice. So once you decide, this is what I'm going to do, give yourself a time frame and commit to it, go through it, and give it as much attention as possible in order to see if the choice will work out or not. Okay. So, in our first episode, the first thing that we talked about is the aspect of making choices and how our brain makes those choices. And if you find yourself getting stuck with decision anxiety, or you think you're really bad at making choices for yourself, start with the simple things. What do you eat? What do you wear? Where are you going to hang out this evening? What you going to watch? Decide with the simple things. Stop telling yourself like, I can't decide. I can't decide is not very productive. But start asking yourself, what do I need to think about to decide? And that data is going to coach your brain into try and making better decisions, right? So this was episode 1 of the Double F podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's on YouTube. It's on various other podcast streaming sites. I'll put the links up. And thanks for watching. I will see you, or listening, watching or listening. I will see you, or I will make sure that you hear me in the next episode. Thank you very much, and see ya.